What happens when love clashes with family expectations and painful secrets? Tonight, CEO Toan faces his toughest challenge yet, being forced by his mother to meet Mai Huong, a woman he does not love. Meanwhile, Diem, the woman who truly holds his heart, waits alone with a heartbroken soul and a dinner left untouched. When Toan finally returns, will their love survive the weight of tradition and misunderstanding? Don't miss this emotional journey of love, sacrifice, and hope. Subscribe now and stay tuned for the full story, because some hearts refuse to be broken. Under the soft, warm glow of the chandelier, the dining room was filled with an uneasy silence. CEO Toan sat rigidly at the polished mahogany table, his eyes fixed on the delicate porcelain plates before him, but his mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. Across from him sat Mai Huong, the young woman his mother had painstakingly arranged for him to meet that evening. She smiled politely, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of nervousness and hope, unaware of the turmoil brewing just a few feet away. Toan's heart was heavy, weighed down not only by the elaborate dinner spread but by the invisible chains of expectation and tradition that had been tightening around him for weeks. His mother, a formidable woman with sharp eyes and unyielding will, had insisted on this introduction. To her, Mai Huong was the perfect match: respectable family background, modest demeanor, and the kind of poised elegance that could complement Toan's public image as a successful CEO. Yet, beneath the surface, Toan felt none of the enthusiasm his mother hoped for. Instead, an icy resentment took root deep within him. His mind wandered unwillingly back to the woman he truly cared about, Diem. The thought of her cooking dinner alone, waiting for him to come home, pierced through his carefully maintained facade. She was nothing like Mai Huong in social standing or upbringing, a simple girl with a painful past, having gone through a failed marriage and struggling with the hardships life had thrown her way. But it was Diem's genuine warmth and unshakable loyalty that had captured his heart, qualities far more valuable than any polished smile or family pedigree. Despite his inner resistance, Toan sat still, his jaw clenched tightly. His mother's voice echoed in his memory, stern and commanding, "This is for the family's sake, Toan. You must keep up appearances. A man in your position cannot afford to let personal feelings cloud judgment." And then there was his sister's gentle, yet firm advice, a reminder of the family's honor and the delicate balance he needed to maintain. The weight of duty pressed down hard on his shoulders. As the conversation between Mai Huong and his mother floated lightly over the table, Toan's responses were curt, measured. His words felt hollow, even to himself. Every polite nod, every practiced smile felt like a betrayal to the promises he had made silently to Diem. Toan hated the charade, the forced pleasantries, the invisible script he was compelled to follow. Yet, his defiance was no match for the combined influence of his family's expectations and the cultural weight of tradition. Mai Huong, sensing his unease, attempted to engage him with soft, tentative questions about his work and interests. Toan responded out of obligation, the spark in his eyes extinguished. His mind remained elsewhere, imagining Diem in the small kitchen, perhaps wiping tears she tried to hide, wondering why he hadn't shown up. The contrast between the two women was stark and unbearable. The room seemed to shrink around him, suffocating in its formality. Toan's fingers drummed anxiously against the table's edge, his breath shallow. How could he explain that the image his mother cherished, a dutiful son marrying the right woman, was not the story his heart wanted to write? The thought of disappointing those who had sacrificed for him was almost as painful as the thought of betraying Diem. Yet, for all his dissatisfaction and silent rebellion, Toan was trapped. He wore the mask of compliance, nodding when expected, agreeing when pressed. The evening wore on like this, each minute a delicate dance on a razor's edge between duty and desire. He felt the oppressive weight of the family legacy, the unspoken rules that bound him tighter than any contract. Finally, as dessert was served and polite chatter filled the air, Toan's eyes remained distant. The warm glow of the chandelier couldn't reach the cold resolve settling in his chest. He had surrendered, at least for tonight, to the will of his mother and the counsel of his sister. But somewhere deep inside, a silent vow was taking shape, a promise that one day, the truth of his heart would no longer be a secret kept in the shadows. Back in her modest apartment, Diem sat alone at the small wooden table that had become the centerpiece of her quiet, simple life. The aroma of the dinner she had prepared still lingered in the air, fragrant jasmine rice, tenderly cooked vegetables, and a fragrant broth simmered with care. Every detail was infused with the hope that Toan would walk through the door, shedding the heavy burdens that separated them for just one evening, to share a meal and perhaps a moment of peace. But the chair across from her remained painfully empty. Tears welled in Diem's eyes, blurring the soft glow of the single lamp hanging overhead. She brushed them away hastily, not wanting to admit to herself how deeply the loneliness gnawed at her. She was no stranger to hardship, her past had been marred by heartache, having once been married to a man whose promises crumbled like dust. Yet, it was not the shadows of her past that haunted her now, but the unbearable sting of abandonment, magnified 1,000 times by Toan's absence this evening. The world outside her window bustled on indifferently, but within the confines of her room, time seemed suspended. Every tick of the clock echoed her growing despair. She thought of Toan, picturing him in a lavish dining room, surrounded by unfamiliar faces and polite conversation, sharing laughter with Mai Huong, the woman her mother-in-law had forced upon him. The image twisted in her chest like a knife, igniting a fierce surge of jealousy and sorrow. Despite everything, Diem had tried to believe that their love could withstand the pressures and expectations that loomed over them like a storm cloud. She had clung to every moment they had shared, every whispered promise in the dark. But tonight was a harsh reminder of the fragile line they walked. She was painfully aware of the differences that divided them, not just in wealth or social standing, but in the weight of history and family expectations. Her thoughts spiraled into the quiet nights they had spent together, the soft smiles exchanged amidst chaos, and the comforting warmth of his embrace that had, until now, been her sanctuary. But now, that warmth seemed distant, replaced by the cold reality that Toan was somewhere else, somewhere far removed from her humble world and the dinner she had lovingly prepared. A single sob escaped her lips, breaking the silence. The tears she had tried to hold back now flowed freely, her body trembling with the ache of feeling forgotten and unworthy. She was painfully aware of the whispers and judgments that might follow if their story ever came to light. The girl with a broken past, waiting in vain for a man caught in the obligations of his family. It was a story she dreaded, yet lived every day. As the night deepened, the darkness seemed to wrap around her like a suffocating shroud. The small room felt colder, emptier. The hope that had flickered so brightly during the day now dimmed to a faint, fragile ember. Diem pressed her hands to her face, wishing she could disappear beneath the weight of her sorrow. Yet, in the midst of her despair, a quiet resilience stirred within her. The love she held for Toan was not easily extinguished. Though tonight had broken her spirit, it had not broken her heart. She knew that this pain was but a chapter in their story, a painful but necessary passage through a maze of secrets, misunderstandings, and sacrifices. Unbeknownst to Diem, Toan's return was drawing near, and with it, a moment that would test the strength of their bond in ways neither could have anticipated. For now, though, she sat alone, heart-aching, tears falling, lost in a sea of longing and unanswered questions. The night deepened, casting long shadows across the city as the quiet streets seemed to hold their breath. Toan's footsteps echoed softly in the hallway outside Diem's modest apartment, each step heavy with the weight of the day's turmoil. Inside, Diem sat slumped over the edge of the worn sofa, her cheeks stained with tears, her body trembling with a sorrow too profound for words. The pain she had tried to suppress all evening spilled forth in helpless sobs, each one a desperate plea for comfort, for understanding, for the warmth of the man she loved. When Toan finally opened the door, the sight before him pierced his heart like a sudden, sharp blade. Diem, vulnerable and raw, was nothing like the composed woman she often portrayed in the public eye. She was a shattered soul, broken not by the past she carried alone, but by the night's cruel absence and the gnawing fear that he might be slipping away. The fragile image he had clung to of strength and resilience crumbled in that instant. Without a word, Toan crossed the room and pulled her gently into his arms. His embrace was tentative at first, as if afraid that any sudden movement might shatter the fragile thread that still connected them. But as Diem buried her face into his chest, her tears soaking through his shirt, he tightened his hold, desperate to shield her from the cold loneliness that had settled around them. In that moment, the outside world, the expectations, the pressures, the endless parade of obligations, faded into insignificance. Toan's own emotions, long bottled up beneath a veneer of stoicism, surged forward. He whispered apologies into her hair, words heavy with regret and longing. The anger he had felt toward his mother's interference, the guilt over disappointing Diem, and the deep ache of knowing he had caused her pain all collided inside him. He wished he could erase the evening's events, replace them with a night spent by her side, sharing laughter and simple happiness. Diem's sobs gradually softened, replaced by a quiet vulnerability that spoke louder than any words could. She clung to Toan not just for comfort but as an anchor to the love they shared, a love tested by circumstance but not yet broken. In his arms, she found a momentary refuge from the harsh realities that threatened to tear them apart. As minutes passed, their breathing slowed, and the tension that had coiled so tightly within both of them began to unravel. Toan gently lifted her chin, searching her tear-streaked face with eyes that held a fierce determination. "I'm sorry, Diem. I never wanted you to feel forgotten or alone," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I hate that tonight was like this." Diem's fingers trembled as they reached up to brush a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "I know, Toan," she whispered back, her voice fragile but filled with quiet strength. I needed you to be here. Not just for the dinner, but for me. For us." That simple confession seemed to bridge the gulf that had opened between them. Toan nodded solemnly, promising himself silently that he would find a way to break free from the chains that bound him, the expectations of his family, the weight of tradition, and reclaim the future he wanted with Diem. The night stretched on, but within the walls of that small apartment, time seemed to slow. Two hearts, battered by the day's trials, beat in unison once more. For all the obstacles still waiting beyond the door, for all the challenges they would face tomorrow, in that tender embrace, Toan and Diem rediscovered the quiet power of love, the kind that could heal wounds, mend broken spirits, and inspire hope even in the darkest of nights. And as dawn approached, casting the first pale light through the curtains, they held each other close, finding strength not in grand gestures or empty promises, but in the simple truth of being together, no matter what storms might come.
Hello, xin chào tất cả khán giả của kênh Mỹ Huyền Review. Mọi người thấy tập phim ngày hôm nay hay không ạ? Ngày hôm nay bản thân tác giả của kênh thấy rất là hay và đặc biệt. Điều đặc biệt nhất đó chính là việc xuất hiện thêm Mai Huong làm xáo trộn tình yêu của diễn và Toan. Mai Huong lại rất được lòng mẹ CEO Toan vì môn đăng hộ đối, và thậm chí là Mai Huong đã có tình cảm với Toan từ trước rồi. Rằng cô có chấp nhận buông tay khi biết Toan là tìm cách tiếp cận anh để chia rẽ